Cool. So we've seen a lot of talks today about some mind-blowing things, and I wanted the last talk to be just demos of cool things that you can do with React. So Ryan Florence. Oh, yeah. Well, sure. Ryan Florence.
Okay, cross your fingers that Yosemite lets me log in. Really, please. Well, while Yosemite's thinking about things, so there I was, selling life insurance, waiting for my wife to graduate college in Rexburg, Idaho. And that was to avoid working at a call center. And I sold a whole bunch of life insurance to a software company there in Idaho, and then right after I got my commission, they hired me to be on their sales team. But before I went into sales, I said, I want to know your product first. I wanted to do implementation consulting for our clients because I wanted to know, who we sold to, know the market. And I got so interested in developing software that I was always talking to our engineers and saying, hey, why don't we make it do this or make it do that? And they're like, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. And so I had lots of time on the airplane and hotel rooms to learn how to do that. And so that's how I got into code. I was sick of being told, no, you can't do that. And my first job at an agency, my boss was asking me, hey, can we do yada, yada, yada? I said, yeah. And after a couple weeks, he was like, this is so weird. I have never had a developer say yes to nearly everything that I ask. Has anyone here ever had to say no to something because of the tech you chose? Yeah, I have. I hate that as a developer because, again, that's why I got into development, is because I want to be able to say yes to things. So this talk and these demos are all around that idea that React lets you say yes. It lets me say yes a whole lot more than I've been able to in the past. So let's pop open a couple demos here. So this is all the same app. And we actually have a real version of this thing at work. And it monitors all of our databases. All of our database clusters. And I did it in each one of the popular frameworks. Ember was the original one that we had, and we started running into some performance issues. Actually, the memory just kept climbing and climbing and climbing, so we put a meta refresh on the HTML for every minute. Otherwise, we'd hit the V8 1.48 whatever gigabyte limit, and then, it would die. All right, so you can see as I move my mouse around in this version, that pop-up, this is ugly, it's just funny demo code, but you can see that every now and then that stops, and my cursor gets way far away from the pop-up. Angular does a great job, and then React over here is also doing a great job. Down in the bottom corner, you can see the memory usage of each of these apps. Stanley Stewart, I don't know if any of you know him, he used to be a coworker of mine, one of my favorite people. He identified a memory leak in Ember, which apparently he fixed last night, but I didn't get his code to fix it. So we'll see this number just keep climbing over here. So this is neat. Let's pump it up a little bit. Let's make it do something more. 25 rows is not a big deal. 50 is neat, but for the interest of time, let's go straight to 100 rows of data. We'll let Ember think about, there we go. So now we're already at 100 megabytes down here. And you see I'm not getting any pop-ups as I move my mouse around. We have 100 database clusters now in our real app. So this is not like some contrived example. That's where we're at. And it is useful to see them all. Angular does a great job still. I can scroll pretty well. You can see the scrolling sort of jumps, like it gets stuck occasionally when it hits a digest loop, I think. And then React, again, does a great job. We don't get any jumpiness when we scroll, and the pop-ups are very fast. Let's just see how different these things really are. So as soon as it's done chunking new data and rendering, I'm just going to do it again. I mean, it's coming. Now, here's the really impressive part. So, like, Angular's still doing a pretty good job here, and this is a contrived example. But as I try to scroll, it's not really working very well, and the pop-ups aren't showing up. But man, React is still just like, it's like nothing is even happening over here. And you also notice as I hover over this, my pop-up, it's the stuff is changing inside. But over here, we get like, it shows up, and then it disappears, and now it's never back again. So all this demo is basically saying is, you know what? The human might not be able to process 2,000 things on a page at once, but if your app wants to do that, it can. You'll still end up with performance things in React as your data set grows and things like that. But at least you know that it can get a lot farther, a whole lot farther, as we just saw from there, before you actually have to start worrying about it. So performance was one of the things that led us at Instructure to start looking at React, and it was this exact app. In fact, I can even pull it up. dbmon. So here's the real one, if I can get logged in here. Well, that's going to take too long. So performance was one of the things that caught our eye about React, but we stayed for a lot more than just performance. And it's been said that if performance is your only argument, you're going to lose, because these other frameworks, like obviously they want their stuff to be as fast as React or anything else out there, and so they'll continue to work until it is that fast. There's something else about the way that React does things that lets you say yes more often. Magic move. So I've just got my list of states here, and they're in alphabetical order. I want to randomize them. So I hit random, and they magically move to their next spot. Now, I realize calling it magic move is probably a bad idea. We've all used TinyMCE. It's not tiny. We've all used software with smart filters. They end up being really, really dumb filters. I think FCK editor got the name right. Anyway, so I've called this magic move anyway. And my favorite thing to do to software is what I call atomic click. Just like click this thing as fast as you can. Doesn't break. I can even like get some new rows in there or shrink them down, and this thing is just doesn't care. Let's look at another use case here for magic move. You've got a list of buddies, and they update every now and then. You don't want them to just pop into new spots. So it's wrapped in a div right now. Let's magic move. And then we make sure that our CSS has a transition. Yeah, there's our transition. And now you see it's animating from one spot to the next. What I like about this demo is you start thinking, no, I can do this in my other favorite framework, and then you start trying to implement it, and then you're like, oh, wait, what on earth? Now what? If I have enough time at the end, I'll maybe get into how that's implemented, but for now, I'd like you to just think it's amazing. Oh, well, actually, you know what? Look, like, let's put an HR in here. Like, it doesn't matter what kinds of elements are in here or what their sizes are. It's going to animate all of them. So this use case actually came from a guy at work. Anyone use Turntable back in the day? We used to have Turntable Friday. No one got any work done. We just all did music, and then it died. And so we rewrote, well, he did. He rewrote Turntable. Right here. So if I want to, this is where this use case came up. If I want to start DJing, I wanted to animate that thing up to the top. And then when I stop DJing, I wanted to animate back down. Now to implement this, you can either implement your own grid system, right? And then like calculate where everything needs to go and then animate it. But the way Magic Move works is it uses the DOM. and it just renders some junk off the page and looks at where they went and then applies that to the other elements and then makes them just magically move. And so we get these centering going on and the line moving. Anyway, it's a real example or a real use case. Let's get to, I'm right on schedule. React accessibility. I sort of don't like the 11 thing that we do in there, but oh well, it's what people do. All right, I've got a button there. Amazing. Oh, nope, I just ruined it. Okay. Yeah, all the way down here. Anyone ever written this terrible, terrible code before? What's wrong with this? Span on click, source closed PNG. You might not know. Like, I bet there's a couple people in here, or maybe half of the people don't know like why this is such an abhorrent sin on the web. Well, React accessibility will tell you why it's such a sin. You forgot an alt-DOM property on an image. Screen reader users will not know what it is. You have a click handler on a non-interactive element, but no role DOM property. It will be unclear what this element is supposed to do to a screen reader user. You have a click handler on a non-interactive element, but no tab index DOM property. The element will not be navigable, is that a word? Or interactive by keyboard users. Also, you have a click handler on an element with no screen readable text. Add aria label or aria labeled by with 2 L's, or put some text in the element. I should add that with 2 L's in there because people will probably think it's an error. Okay, so let's work on this one by one. No alt on the image. Okay. Close. Whoa! I got rid of a bunch of them. So now I need a role and I need a tab index. So let's put a role on here and a tab index. Now what? Oh gosh, this is hard. You have role button but did not define an on key up handler. Add it and have the space key do the same thing as an on click handler, or just use a button. Yeah, so like my space is not working. So rather than do that, I think I will just make this a button. And then I don't need this or this. And oh, but CSS is so hard with buttons, right? Border none. Background none. Ta-da! Actually, we need a few more things like padding. Yeah, whatever. There's some other things to do to it. But now, React accessibility is not yelling at you. Why React is cool here is, so we're used to being able to throw some sort of tool at our website, right? And it just looks at all the HTML that you kicked out. But this is a step beyond that because I can actually look at, you've added a click handler, right? That's different. If you're just looking at HTML, you don't know that there's a click handler in there. So there are assertions and things that I can do with React that I can't do with the typical accessibility tools that we might throw at our code. But beyond that, why I think this is even more interesting than some of the other libraries out there is I can go and inspect the render tree before it's rendered. So I've got an assertion here. These ones, button, or wait, no. It's the no label. So I check, is there an aria label or aria labeled by? Is the tag name image, and does it have an alt? Or has child text node. So what this does is jumps through the whole render tree before it's rendered. Actually, it does this check before you're even in a render method. You can just do var element equals react.createElement, and then it's going to do these assertions on it. And I recurse over the children, and if that child has more children, then I recurse here and keep on checking. And so what I'm looking for is any text down the whole render tree. And if you don't have anything that a screen reader is going to announce, I can go ahead and say, hey, you need to add something. So this is really cool that you can look at your code, look at what's going to render, do some validations before anything is even rendered on the page. All right. Where are we at next? Portals. Portals are super cool. I've got a modal here, and I think I've done a great job. Modals are easy, right? It's just like a screen in the back and then some content in the middle. And the way that I've got this implemented is this one's called dumb modal. I've got my div, and it's really nice to be able to declare a modal right here. A lot of times modals are tricky, and like you stick one at the root of your app, and then like you shove things to it somehow through some module or singleton or something like that. Because as you know, if you render a modal in context of your UI, and then someone changes the styles on you, like there's a new design and they said, oh, well, this container is 800 pixels wide and its position is relative, and then all of a sudden your modals look like this because of the cascade in CSS. So you've got to render your modal outside of the app. You've got to render outside of the context of where you're doing it. But I don't want to lose this ability to declare my modal right there in my view, like right where it belongs. So we built a thing called React modal, which is not so dumb. And it doesn't matter what the new styles do. This will be fine. If I come and inspect this element, we can see that my React app is here, and the modal is actually in an element outside of that app. And so React modal underneath the hood renders what I call a portal. And I have no clue as the end user that it's doing crazy stuff like that, but it's just going to work. So what is a portal? Well, I don't think we have time to explain what portals are too much, but yeah, let's look at this. So instead of making my own modal, you could also get by with a jQuery modal. My favorite taco is carnitas. And now I've got carnitas up here. Let's check out how this works. It's just called dialog. And as the user, I have no idea that this is a jQuery UI dialog. I've even got like a form that can submit up to it. So let's look at how dialog is implemented here. Render, return null. Well, okay, and then how is this like, what's happening? When the component mounts, so this is where we open the portal. We stop rendering React at that point. So we've got this render tree that's come down, then we're like, okay, you're done from this point on. We're going to make a portal. Component did mount. We just create an element. We append it to the document body. And then we call the jQuery this.dialog on that other element. And then we render dialog content into it. So now down here we have React render, the props that we passed in, enter the portal. And then we render it to this.portal. So this you don't normally see in the middle of your React app, right? Usually this is at the very, very top. But you can stop a render tree and then start a new one in the middle of a component's lifecycle. And so that's why it's a portal. We stop up here, we pop out the other side. Man, I wanted to play Portal for a couple of minutes up here. Get one of those spots where like you jump off and then like shoot a hole and then like you fly out and then shoot a hole and then keep going. And then we get some new props, and then we can call methods on our jQuery UI dialog. When we get new props, we just render with the new props, and so those new props come in here. So we get the live updates, and then when this component goes away, we unmount it and destroy all our other stuff, clean up our mess. So the interoperability story of React is amazing, because you can adopt React, and even if you've got jQuery UI in your app, you don't have to now, oh, shoot, we got to go find all of these new components with new CSS. You can take those original DOM libraries that you're already using and just wrap React around them with these portals and not really have to change anything. So the basic thing that you have to worry about is these libraries manipulate the DOM, and React is going to freak out when it comes back and doesn't find what it had before. So portals are cool, and most of the demos you've seen so far have used them. The Magic Move uses a portal. React modal uses a portal, and obviously this one does too. Now I'm way behind. All right. This is something that we had to say no to one of our UI designers. We had some routes, and routes are important, so we needed those URLs up there. But he also wanted us to be able to animate some components on the page when the routes changed. And so here we've got our monthly spending between January, February, and March, and you can see my URL changes, and I can hit the back and forward buttons, and I get these really nice animations. Thank you. React doesn't blow away the DOM, right? If your view layer, coupled with its router, whenever you change URLs, blows away the old view and then sets up a new one, you will never be able to do an animation like this and have a URL without breaking out of some convention somewhere. So we can see in the code over here, spending has no idea other than that, hey, I've got this transition. React is just going to keep this thing in the DOM and then animate it because it's got new data. This was a terrible thing we used to do in the router where we put a key on your route handlers, and so you couldn't do these animations with our router. But fortunately, we quit doing that. Ever used iTunes? Man, there's a version where they changed the user experience quite a bit on us, and a lot of people didn't like it. But it was really interesting where you click on an album, you got all these rows of albums, click on the album, and then it animates down, and then you have that album's details, right? And then if you click on another album, you've got the details under that row. And think about your routers that we've used in the past, or even our router, React router. You have the route handler to say where in your view you want the child route to render. And so I thought, well, how would I do this in some of the other frameworks that I've used before? And so I actually tried to do this UI for a project for my team. Little tangent. Have you ever tried to measure the productivity of the people on your team as programmers? I have no idea how to do that. It drives me crazy. So we settled on you close a ticket, you get a point. The end. And so make your ticket small and you get more points. But that's great because we want small iterations in the app. So that was it. That's the whole thing. And so each row had a person and their weekly moving average. And when you click on a week, I wanted it to open up underneath, just like iTunes, and then display all the tickets that they closed so that I could easily see what's going on and be a jerk boss or something about things. And I tried, but I could not get a dynamic outlet in Ember to allow me to move where to render the child routes depending on where I was. So here, this is built with React Router. And I can click on these. It's fetching asynchronous data from Discogs. I'm even reading in the colors from the albums, which I was pretty proud of. And notice the URL up here is changing, and my back button works. I'm getting these animations. Thank you. I was talking to people about this talk earlier, and I was like, I've got to set this one up right for them to understand just how awesome this is. So just pretend it's 3 times awesomer than you think it is for me, and I'll feel great. Yeah. It's 4 times as awesome. Do you notice I got rid of semicolons on this file, but the other ones had them? Oh, I don't want nerd tree. I do want nerd tree. Sorry. All right, very simple app. Got my routes, and album is a child route. I load up some stuff when the router runs, and then I render it. Let's look at albums is the really interesting one. So we can just look at albums. So we look at, nothing was wrong earlier. I'm not going to save, or else it'll break. Render is pretty simple here at first sight. We figure out our rows, and then we map them to render each row, and then we dump them in. So what is this calc rows thing doing? Calc rows decides how many albums per row can we fit. So I am manually constructing these rows. You can see right here, I've got a few rows, and if I shrink my browser window, there are more. So yeah, we're down at 5 now, and then we can come back up to 4. So that first thing, calc rows, decides how many rows can we fit on the page. So now I've got an array of arrays. And then what do we do? We mapped the album down here, right? Or we render row. Okay. So then what does render row do? So I passed my params down as props. And so I check, well, what's my current ID and what's the last child ID? You might not have noticed this, but hang on. And then I decide, do I have the current album? And did I had the current album? And then, am I in the same row as last time? And then I map the row into a bunch of albums. And then I say, hey, do I have the current one? Then put the route handler under me. Did I have the old one? Then put the route handler again? 2? Why are there 2 route? Oh, last child ID. This is pretty weird, right? So down at the bottom, that one stays rendered even though I'm switching places. So I've got 2 child views at the same time that are all connected up to the router. And I didn't have to do anything weird. I just did 2 route handlers. Yeah, you guys don't get it. I'm just kidding. I'm sure you get it. I had to do some weird branching here. Old, true. And then he feels bad. He's like, I know I'm getting old. I'm in my 30s. And I'm in tech. I'll just work at this company forever. Yeah. So this is awesome. Also, it's Bob Marley. How long can I do this? 3 minutes? All right, we got better stuff to do. More stuff to do. Curl. Anyone used curl before? This is a great tool. It's also called Bower. Sorry. Anyone seen the React Router mega demo before? Yeah. All right. I curled a website and I got a whole bunch of React-looking HTML. What does that mean? That means I'm rendering on the server. So this comes pre-rendered from the server, and then as I click around, it's using React Router to then just go and fetch the data as I move around. So that's pretty cool. Because now you get like this immediate render of the data before JavaScript even downloads, like this thing is here and ready. And if the JavaScript is huge and you click a link, it doesn't matter. So I've got JavaScript turned off over here in Safari, and you see I click and I get a full page reload. So I don't even need JavaScript for this thing to happen. At this point, running it is actually in the browser is actually just a optimization. It just makes it faster. Now there are some things that we sometimes think about with server rendering where it's like fast boot or it's a quick pre-render. We call it pre-rendering a lot. I don't know, like it's a whole app that runs on the server. This is not just a pre-render. And the big question around that is like, okay, well, actions, right? What do actions mean without JavaScript? Well, this doesn't have JavaScript. And I click new contact, and I say vgames. By the way, that's what vjaux means. And let's add him in here. There's no JavaScript running there. It's like, okay, that's neat, but you've probably got a whole bunch of weird code. Should have pulled this open earlier, but they took my computer from me. And what is a presentation by Ryan Florence if I don't change my color scheme a couple of times? Ooh, yeah. So new contact. You guys probably don't like that. That's better. So here we've got new contact. When the form submits on the client, we'll do handle this, handle submit. We grab the values, and then we transition to create contact. And then over here at create contact, we'll transition to, we take the parameters, we make a post to our data API, and then we redirect to that contact. Well, what about when we aren't in this browser or we don't have JavaScript? Well, our form has a plain old action. And this thing it doesn't care if it's on the server or the client. So if every interaction in your app is represented by a URL, just like in the 90s, you now have a server app that will render in the client. Thank you. That's it.